We're here with GM of the Golden State Warriors, Mike Dunleavy. Mike, thanks for joining us. Monte, Poole, of course, Bonta Hill, and the draft is finally over. You get two wing players, and it seemed to be an emphasis on getting some length and some size on the roster this season.
No doubt. I mean, that's a huge point of, I think, emphasis for us to address that need. And I think, drafting Axel 11 couldn't embody that more. We're getting a guy that can play multiple positions, super long, 7'3" wingspan, 6'10", a winner. He kind of checks all the boxes for us. So we're pretty fortunate to get him at 11.
What didn't Axel kind of catch your attention? Was it last season when he on the way to a national championship at Michigan? Was it the season before? When did you first learn about Axel and the type of player he was?
Yeah, I mean, I think he was on the radar with his production when he was at UAB. We knew about his unusual journey, watched him a little bit. He came out here last year. I think it was the NIT, played Santa Clara. Interviewed him for the draft. He ended up going back to school. Great decision for him to end up at Michigan. And then this year, with the dominance of that team, seeing them early on, seeing the way he fit in, and particularly transitioning for him for like more of a inside guy to an outside guy, and then showing he can do both. That's when kind of things popped for us and said, wow, this guy could be pretty interesting. And so we followed him all the way through, went through the draft process with him, and to his credit, had a great year and was worthy of being drafted in the lottery.
It seemed like he was a logical pick, given where you were, what your needs are, and his versatility.
Yeah.
But I'm wondering now, before you make that pick, is there sometimes a concern about overthinking it? You know what I mean? You think, it's too perfect almost. Maybe we should do something different. How did you get past that, or did you have to?
Yeah, no, I think in general at the draft, you worry about overthinking it. There's so much time you have to explore and look at these guys and interview them and think about it and watch the film, and you want to be careful about that. I think in his case, though, that's the simplicity of it, is like, hey, this is the player there. He fits great. He checks all these boxes. Don't overthink it. Take him. And that's what we did.
So in essence, if he was there, you were going to take him.
Yeah, I mean, look, could other stuff have happened? And, we always go with our board. He was the highest guy on our board at that time, so we made the pick. And I think deep down, a lot of us were hoping he'd be there and we'd get him.
You talked to his family also along the way here. And his mom obviously was a big influence. What kind of vibe did you get from just your interaction with him and his people?
Yeah, I mean, he obviously, his mom's a big part of his life, and he's got 3 younger sisters. So I think there's a nice balance for him of, he's got a competitiveness, but sort of a softness being around the women in his life. And we just felt really comfortable with his background, his family situation, who he was. We talked to, multiple college coaches of his, and that's what you do in this process. And we came out feeling like he'd be a great fit for the Warriors.
Leger, your second round pick, 54 overall, another wing, 6'7", 6'8", nice little lefty stroke from the 3-point shot. Lit up your Duke Blue Devils in the ACC tournament. Didn't get the win, but he looked good.
Yeah.
It's like, who's this guy?
That's perfect for me. Play well, lose to Duke.
Right. I know you love that right there.
Yeah.
Let's talk about his personality for a minute. He's got some clay to him, right? Does he remind you of Klay Thompson at all?
Yeah, he's got this quiet demeanor. There's an underlying dryness and sense of humor that he has that we appreciate. But, he's a kid. It's all about basketball. He's pretty focused on the game, on getting better. He's had a unique path, too, at multiple different schools. But we're comfortable with him. And, we'll get him through Summer League and see how things go and see what happens for next year. But we like him as a long-term project in terms of the things we look for and what we value.
I'm glad you said well-traveled. Obviously, a JUCO guy like Axel as well. And I got a soft spot in JUCO. You know that. Monte Poole knows that. But looking at him, how much did his coach at Florida State, Luke, who we do here a long time with the Golden State Warriors, how much did he influence that pick for you guys, and what did he tell you about Leger?
Yeah, I mean, I think anytime we can do a background with people that we know and trust, it's important. And, he was even at St. Bonaventures with Woj, who, have a comfort level covering the NBA. He knows the NBA, he knows guys. Luke especially too, being on our coaching staff and knowing what Coach Kerr and our group look for. We felt very comfortable with not only the player that he could be and fit in with us, but the personality. And so that's reassuring. The intel background stuff is really important, and I think he checked the boxes there.
When you watched the team last season, especially when Steph and Jimmy were out, obviously you didn't get the results you wanted, but what were the things that exposed you to what you're going to need to compete next season?
Yeah, I mean, I think the obvious thing without those two guys is on the offensive end, how do we score efficiently? How do we get a shot? And Steph and Jimmy are two of the greatest in the game that can do that. So playing without those guys is rough. I don't know that there's a whole lot of great solutions, but I think in terms of our roster construction and what we're looking at moving forward in the next season, we have to be prepared, certainly with Jimmy missing a good amount of games. And then Steph, at his age, we have to be realistic that he's not going to be out there every night. So addressing those needs on the offensive end will be important. And then while still having some of these guys that we feel good about, and still got to have a good defense.
When you look at the two guys you're bringing in through the draft, and then you've already looking at some guys that bring in as agents, free agents.
Yeah.
Are you looking for specifics, or are you looking for guys that, just can play basketball? What do you?
Yeah, no, I think specifically, look, to be honest, getting Axel is a guy that we feel like can plug in and just fill a lot of gaps for us in our lineup. If you look at the players we have on our roster, here's a guy that can play multiple positions, fit right in there at one of the toughest positions to guard in the league. And that's not very readily available in the trade market or in free agency. So not having to overly address that is key. We'll go into free agency and we'll look for some, like I mentioned, some scoring, some better offensive punch, and then look to bring back some of the guys that are unrestricted free agents for us.
Is that an emphasis on maybe finding another creator for the offense? When you look at these NBA playoffs and the teams kind of that made it to the end there in June, is that an emphasis in this offseason to try to get some players in here who could create more and create open shots for other guys?
Yeah, I mean, obviously we got Steph coming back. He'll still be great. Jimmy's going to miss some time. But yeah, we have to find a way, get more guys to get the domino to fall and break down the defense. I think we've got really good players. Once that happens, they can play off that cut, move, pass. And Yaxel's no different. I mean, he'll fit right in that regard. And I think he'll be able to provide some offense for us too. But that would be a heavy load as a rookie in the NBA to expect too much there, but I think he'll do all the other things.
When it comes to Jimmy Butler, obviously he's come here and helped change the temperature for you guys. When he got traded over from Miami, you guys go to the second round of the playoffs, and unfortunately Steph Curry strains a hamstring. With Jimmy Butler now out with the torn ACL, what's the timeline for him when you see him coming back? Is it a January? Is it a February? And do you think that once he is back, he could get back to where he was previous before he tore his ACL?
Yeah, I mean, I think timeline is undecided still. I mean, it's obviously he's not going to be ready for training camp and the opening of the season, and we're going to have to go a good amount of games without him. But we don't have an exact date. We want him to get back right, get back well, be careful about it. But, we do expect him and Moses to be back at some point next year. In the meantime, got to hold down the fort. But I do think when Jimmy returns, depending on his the load he can carry, the amount of minutes, I do think he'll be a very good player based on the way he plays. He's the two best things about him are his mind and his physicality. And you don't lose that with a hurt knee. So he's adjusted well as he's aged already on the athleticism front. And I think that'll be no different. It's just, we got to get him back when we can.
You said something funny the other night when you were asked about Axel's age. You said, it's not 38. But yet when you look at the roster, you're going to have some age on this roster, no matter whether it's 3, 4, 5 guys. And Steve was saying that, it's going to be tough if we have a bunch of guys that can't play back-to-backs. How do you find a way to thread that needle?
Yeah, we have to thread the needle of talent and availability, and it's a tricky one for sure. So it's something, as we look at free agency, we're always talking through. I mean, as much as we talk about how good a player is, availability comes up. How many games does this guy miss? Can he play? So it's a big part of it. But if I'm being honest, if there's a player that's significantly better than everybody else and maybe would be a little bit less healthy, you probably need to lean into the talent, given that Jimmy and Moses are going to be out some games. So it's a tough situation we're in, no doubt about it, but we'll find a way.
Yeah, the free agent market this summer is not exactly mind-blowing, So is it, again, when you go into that, is it a matter of, okay, free agency and or trade? I mean, how do you look at what you guys have to do this summer to be where you want to be in September when training camp starts?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's where you want to be in September when training camp starts, and there's where you want to be in the spring as you try and compete for the postseason and get in the postseason. And we have a couple of transaction cycles here in the summer, and then once again in February, where we feel like we can build and maximize our team. And so I think the biggest thing is to put together a good team going into camp. And as I mentioned before, a lot of the improvement for us is going to have to come from within with our habits, taking care of the ball, doing the little things. Get that knocked out, you get on your way, having a good season. We need to stay healthy and then get those guys back. And then, we'll see at the trade deadline and we'll evaluate everything. But if this is this is not a fix everything over the next couple of weeks in free agency. We're not in that situation based on some stuff we have going on, but we can get a lot better. We can have a good start to the season, and we can be in a really good shape to make a run. But we got to get off to a good start.
I also wanted to ask you, you've had some success in finding guys in the second round guys that can give you something.
Yeah.
Is that a science, an art? I mean, is it luck? I mean, how do you look back then and say, how do we do that?
Yeah, I mean, look, I never underestimate luck as a big factor in all this, whether it's, drafting guys or staying healthy, things like that. But no, we have a process we go through, and I think we don't overthink it, as we talked about before, and say, hey, we need a point guard or we need more size. Like when you're drafted late in the fifth, you're really looking at, can this guy find a way to make it? So you're betting on the personality, the skill set, prior production. You look at all those things and you take an educated guess. And to the credit of the guys who've been here and been drafted in that range, whether they started on a two-way or in Santa Cruz or on a roster, they bought into the player development. They've improved. Coach Kerr gave him an opportunity to play last year with Will Richard. We probably wouldn't have thought he would be playing early in the season, but he earned that. He earned it in training camp, in the preseason, and so he got an opportunity. And that's how it's worked out for these guys. But we've done reasonably well, and hopefully we can continue to do that.
How much was Steve Kerr involved in the draft process this season? Obviously coming back, we didn't know if he was going to come back, but obviously he is, and everybody's pleased with that. But how much was he involved, and how fond is he of Axel and of course Leger?
Yeah, I mean, his frankly, since we decided that Steve would be back, his commitment to this whole thing has been tremendous. Not only just with the draft, but preparing for next season, with our coaching staff and how we want to play. But he spent a lot of time with these guys. I mean, obviously the staff and the scouts know him better as players, but he was at the workouts. He went out and got meals. We watched film with these guys. It's definitely a thing where I wanted Steve, our head coach, to be comfortable with the player we're getting and the person. And I feel no doubt with Axel, we vetted that out really well. And I know Steve, our group asked him a couple days before the draft, what's the biggest need when you look at our roster? And he said there's a huge gap kind of in the middle of it with our kind of forward position. We need a guy that can fit in there and connect the game. And I was thinking to myself, is he trying to push us in a way to take Axel, or is he just speaking freely? And sure enough, we ended up with a guy that potentially could do that. So I think everybody's aligned on the same page and feel good about where we're going.
I was going to ask him about the viral clip on draft night. First of all, I know you're probably like, no more cameras ever at draft night, right?
Well, we're good. I mean, you guys have known Raymond forever, so he's all about more access, and it's all good.
So just admit to the people, was Joe not happy about the pizzas you guys were ordering? Is he a pineapple guy? You a mustard black olive guy?
Yeah, I mean, he was. No, we were joking about the golf thing, but for real, it's one of those things where, to Joe's credit, he was super excited about taking Axel, and he was the guy on our board, and he was the pick we're going to make. But as far as the process, you gotta feel it out with other teams. And if we're getting calls in, tell them we need to listen. We need to have our ears open and make sure we're not passing up something we would regret or not want to do. And so I think there was a little bit of an exchange of Joe kind of being like, what are we waiting for? Like, take the guy. And nobody's going to jump ahead of us. It's our pick. Believe me, I've done a lot of fantasy football drafts. We have our time, and we ended up in the right spot. But it's pretty funny that they got caught on camera, and all good, but good exchange.
You're on the clock. Yeah, so it's not like somebody can jump in and take.
Yeah, no. Yeah, the only way somebody's jumping in is if they trade for it. So we hold the cards on that, and I was just kindly reminding Joe that that's how it works.
It's like, I'm on the phone, dude. Hold on. Well, Mike, best of luck this season. Got any more money?
No, I'm good.
No, we're good. Yeah, best of luck this season. Can't wait for Summer League, the Cali Classic, of course, in this upcoming season.
Good. Awesome, guys. Thank you.
All right.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, Mike.
Yep.